everyone, and welcome to another monthly reads video. In this series I review the books that I've read over the past month, and so this month I read this. It is a beautiful Barnes & Noble edition of Wicked and Son of a Witch that my partner bought back from America for me, as it's quite difficult to get in the UK. I was so pleased when he brought this back, and I really enjoyed reading it the first time round and decided last month that I would read it again. So, if you've ever sat there and thought, I wonder what the novel, the musical Wicked is based on is like, then this is the video for you, because that's what I'm going to talk about. Be ready for a huge culture shock if you think that the novel is exactly like the musical. It really isn't. It's vastly different. There are certain plot points that are the same and certain narrative things that happen, but there are a lot of things taken out. There are a lot of things changed. Many of those things are changed because they just wouldn't be appropriate for the younger audience that enjoys Wicked, as they are quite mature things that happen within the book. So if you're not familiar with the musical Wicked, or you haven't read the book either, then it's basically a story that is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz, focusing on the Wicked Witch herself and her life and how she became who she was. And then Son of a Witch follows on from that, telling the story of her supposed son. The book differs a lot from the musical, so if you are a huge fan of the musical and have been debating reading the book, then one thing I would note is that there are a lot of mature adult themes within the novel of Wicked, and some of these people may find uncomfortable, and so definitely it's not one for younger readers. The basic plot of Wicked follows the Wicked Witch of the West from her birth right up until she gets a bucket of water dumped on her by Dorothy. It follows her early years as a toddler growing up with her unusual family group, and then how she goes to Shears and becomes a very active student, fighting for the cause that she believes against the wizard, and then eventually getting to meet the wizard and how that affects her life. She then disappears for quite a while, and the other characters wonder what has happened to her and what she's been up to, and then she turns up again in the fortress that she lives in The Wizard of Oz, and it has Dorothy following her around, which is quite fun for her, as she just wants her shoes back because they're her sisters and by law they're legally hers. So what did I think of Wicked? Well, I enjoyed it. It's a good book. It's split into different sections, and each of those sections kind of has its own unique voice, but it still follows the same set writing style, so it isn't quite that unique as you would get in other novels. The different sections are told from different characters' points of view, so they're not always reliable to the sort of overall questions that are wanted to be answered within the story. Each of these sections is told from a different character's point of view, and so they focus on the things that are important to them, which brings an element of realism to the book, as they're not sort of following the story as you'd want them to, but following it how they want to go and focusing on their wants and needs and what's relevant to them. They don't always have this idea that Elphaba is the main character, but they do all sort of have a focus on her. We never really learn a lot of Elphaba's sort of deep internal inner thoughts. A lot of that is hidden from us, and that creates this element of mystery within the book. We learn a lot more about her, yet there are still those key elements missing, that what really makes her tick. The writing style is as you'd expect for this type of book, and it's very enjoyable. So yeah, if you don't mind a couple of slightly disturbing, mature elements to it, then yeah, I definitely recommend reading Wicked. It's a very good book, but yeah, just beware of those slightly maturer things that are a little bit unsettling due to the fact that it's set in a fantasy world and there are lots of strange magical things going on as well, mixed in with these themes. Witch. It basically follows the character of Lear 10 years on from where Wicked finishes, and basically when the water gets dumped on the witch, he just tags along with Dorothy and then just kind of gets left to do his own thing. And the book starts when he has been found by these nuns, and they basically help him back to health. And while he's there, he recounts what happened with his journey with Dorothy to the Emerald City, how he ended up becoming a soldier, how he was looking for this girl but he never found her, and it's all this big mystery. That's a spoiler, sorry. It's basically him coming to terms with having to finish the things that Elphaba started, but not even really knowing if he is actually her son or not, which is something that he never really truly finds out, unless you think that the end is definite confirmation that he is her son, but I won't say what happens at the end because that's a really big spoiler. But he runs away with this nun once he's back to full health, and he starts actually trying to finish these things for his mum, but he has kind of no idea what he's doing. In some ways it's kind of a bit more magical than Wicked because there's a lot more actual magic. Lear trying to ride the broom quite a few times. He goes after some dragons at some point that are supposedly causing problems, and he talks to a lot more animals than Elphaba did, so again, like Wicked, it's split into sections, but I feel like these sections are a little bit more sporadic than what they were like in Wicked, as it's mostly Lear, then somebody else, Lear, then somebody else, Lear, then somebody else, then just like loads of Lear, and then a tiny little bit of somebody else, and then back to Lear again. It really does follow his internal thoughts a lot, so you learn a lot more about his motivations than you ever did about Elphaba's, and that was really quite enjoyable to know that. There are 2 more books in this sort of series of, you know, retelling of the Wizard of Oz, but unfortunately I haven't read those, but hopefully I probably will get around to reading them at some point, and then I'll find out what happens next. Overall, I enjoyed Son of a Witch. I think I actually enjoyed it a lot more than Wicked. It just seemed to have a lot more smaller condensed story. You know, you knew where you were going with things because you kind of had this understanding of Lear as a character better than you did as Elphaba. And I think that's just the whole point of the book, really, that you're supposed to understand him a bit more. Even though he's still quite unreliable and sort of does his own thing and doesn't really follow the plot you want him to follow. But that's quite endearing really with him, and is a part of his learning curve and him learning to become his own person and make his own mark in the world, yet still having to sort of do what people want him to do in a kind of way. And I think we can all sort of understand that in a lot of ways. So I think he's a lot more relatable character than Elphaba is in a lot of ways, but I just feel because we don't get a lot of her internal monologues, it's harder to understand like what she's thinking and why she's doing these things and the determination behind them. So, if you've read either of these, then do let me know in the comments. You know, I'd like to know what your thoughts on these books were, and, you know, did you enjoy them? Were you disappointed when you read it thinking that it would be similar to the musical, or were you prepared for that? So, thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, please like and subscribe. Bye!